CEO Victoria Thorne mistook her black driver's calm attitude for weakness, making the biggest mistake of her life. At 8:14 p.m. in the Apex Horizon lobby, she fired Dante Crawford after he detoured to avoid a protest and protect her. Dante, a great former Chicago SWAT chief, took a driver job just to pay for his sister's school and stay away from violence. But this clash pushed him into a dangerous rescue he never planned. Danger hits next. A Ram 1500 truck speeds in, armed kidnappers strike, and Victoria screams in terror. Is Dante's silence a sign of fear, or is he a skilled fighter waiting for the right moment to strike? To understand that storm, we need to go back a few hours. We need to see the quiet life Dante built before it all broke apart. At 5:45 p.m., the smell of onions and bay leaves filled a small apartment in Lincoln Park. Soup simmered on the old stove. Steam fogged the kitchen window. Dante Crawford stood there, stirring slowly, his mind calm. He wore a cheap black uniform from Target. He smoothed the wrinkles with careful hands. He fixed a scratched metal cufflink on his sleeve. Every move was slow and steady, like a man who trusted his own hands completely. Dante was 34 years old. He had broad shoulders and a strong jaw. He looked like he belonged on a magazine cover, not behind a steering wheel. But looks never told his real story. Under his shirt sleeve, a 7-centimeter scar ran across his left shoulder. It was pale and thin now. He got it during a hostage rescue 3 years ago. Nobody at his new job knew that scar existed. His sister Maya walked into the kitchen. She was 20 years old, a medical student at the University of Chicago. She smelled the soup and smiled. "Smells like Sunday," she said. Dante almost smiled back. "Sit down. It's almost ready." Maya set her heavy backpack down by the door, exhausted from a long day of anatomy lectures. She had been studying to become a surgeon, a goal she chased with the same quiet determination as her brother. She reached into her backpack. She pulled out a small leather keychain. She had carved the number 402 into the leather herself. That number was Dante's old badge number. "For luck," she said, pressing it into his palm. "Come home safe tonight." Dante closed his fingers around the leather. The surface felt rough under his skin, worn soft in one corner from years of touching it. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. He remembered a promise he made 2 years ago. His partner, Marcus Vance, died during a drug raid gone wrong. After the funeral, Dante told Maya he would leave that world behind. No more guns. No more raids. Just dinner, every night, on time. He became a driver for hire. Rich clients. Quiet cars. Zero danger. That was the plan. Marcus had been more than a partner. They trained together for 8 years. They shared the same locker room, the same bad coffee, the same silent nods before a dangerous entry. Marcus had a wife and a baby daughter waiting for him at home. The raid that night went wrong in seconds. A door that should have been clear wasn't. Marcus took a bullet meant for Dante. He fell backward into Dante's arms, blood soaking through his vest. "Tell my girls I love them," Marcus whispered. His voice was already fading. "And tell your sister to stop worrying about you so much." Dante held him until the ambulance arrived. He held him even after he knew it was too late. The paramedics had to pull his hands away, gently, one finger at a time. At the funeral, Maya stood beside him in the cold October wind. She didn't say much. She just held his arm the whole time, like she was afraid he might disappear too. That night, back at their apartment, Maya finally spoke. "I can't lose you too," she said, tears sliding down her face. "Please, find something safer. Please, Dante." He promised her right there, on the kitchen floor, surrounded by unwashed dishes and cold coffee. No more raids. No more guns. Just dinner, every night, on time. He kept that promise for 2 full years. He never once told Maya how much he missed the work, how much a part of him still woke up ready for danger. Some promises cost more than people realize. At 7:55 p.m., Dante sat behind the wheel of a black Lincoln Navigator. The heater blew warm air across his hands. In the back seat, Victoria Thorne tapped her sharp red nails against an iPad screen. Victoria was the CEO of Apex Horizon Holdings, a massive finance company in downtown Chicago. Charts on her screen showed falling numbers. Her jaw tightened with every swipe. She was 38, sharp-featured, and always dressed like she owned the room. Tonight she wore a tight black dress under a wool coat. Her heels clicked even when she sat still, tapping the floor mat with impatience. Victoria built Apex Horizon from nothing but a small inheritance and pure hard work. She clawed her way through a world that doubted every woman who walked into a boardroom. That fight left a mark on her, a hard shell she wore like armor. She believed quick agreement was the same thing as respect. Every driver, every assistant, every junior employee owed her instant agreement. Anything less felt like a threat to the empire she built with her own two hands. She judged people fast, and she judged them by their surface. A quiet man in a cheap uniform read to her, as weak, as someone without ambition or worth. She had never once been proven wrong about that. Not until tonight. Tonight, though, the numbers on her screen told a different story. A big business deal worth millions had fallen apart that afternoon. Her company leaders whispered behind closed doors about replacing her. Stress sat heavy in her chest like a stone. The car moved toward Michigan Avenue. Dante's eyes scanned the street the way they always had, even after 2 years away from the job. He saw 3 men in thick coats standing with their backs to the wind. Strange. Everyone else faced away from the cold, not into it. He saw a black Ram 1500 truck parked illegally, no license plate visible. He saw the crowd ahead moving in a strange rhythm, too tight, too organized for a normal protest. Something old and sharp woke up inside him. A warning, not a protest. A setup. "Ma'am, I need to take a different route," Dante said, his voice calm and even. Victoria didn't even look up. "We have a signing at 8:15. Don't test me tonight." "There's a situation up ahead," Dante said. "I'll have us there just as fast." He turned the wheel gently, guiding the SUV into a quiet side alley. The tires rolled over wet pavement, throwing soft splashes against the door. Steam rose from a manhole cover near a shuttered bakery, mixing with the smell of wet garbage from a dumpster nearby. A stray cat darted between 2 parked cars, startled by the headlights. In the mirror, Dante caught a flicker of movement. The Ram 1500 had pulled out of its illegal spot. It followed them into the alley at a careful distance, headlights off. His pulse ticked up slightly, though his hand stayed perfectly still on the wheel. He said nothing about it yet. He needed more information first. Victoria's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide with fury. "Did I ask you to think? I asked you to drive." She grabbed a thick folder from the seat and threw it onto the dashboard. Papers slid and fell everywhere. "You're reckless. You have zero judgment. This is exactly why I don't trust drivers who think they know better." Dante said nothing. He kept both hands steady on the wheel. His jaw stayed relaxed. His pulse stayed slow. He had faced armed men in dark hallways. An angry woman's words could not shake him. The car reached the tower. Rain hit the windshield in hard, cold sheets. The clock read 8:14 p.m. Victoria's hand shot forward. She ripped the gold-plated security badge from Dante's jacket pocket clip. "You're done," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "Pack your things. You'll never drive for me again." Dante stepped out into the freezing rain without a single word. Water soaked through his collar in seconds. He said nothing. He explained nothing. He simply turned and walked away. Inside his mind, a war raged. The soldier in him wanted to warn her about the truck that followed them into the alley. The brother in him, the one who promised Maya's safety, told him to walk. Just walk. Don't look back. He walked 50 meters to a bus stop. Rain dripped through a cracked shelter roof. Puddles below him shimmered, with dirty rainbow streaks from spilled oil. He reached into his pocket and touched the leather keychain. His thumb traced the carved numbers, 402, over and over. He remembered Marcus's last words before he died. A protector isn't defined by the uniform he wears. He's defined by whether he stands up when the darkness comes. Dante closed his eyes. The job wasn't a paycheck. It was who he was, underneath everything. A promise to Maya never meant turning his back on a life in danger. Not even the life of a woman who had just heard him in the freezing rain. Then he heard it. An engine roaring back toward the tower. Glass shattering, sharp and sudden. Dante's eyes snapped open. The sadness in them turned cold and focused like a blade catching light. He ran back toward the tower, moving low and fast along the concrete flower beds. Rain slammed into his face. Wind pushed against his chest. None of it slowed him down. He had just stepped back into a world of violence and tactics, a world he swore he'd left behind forever. Inside the lobby, chaos had already exploded. Building security guards ran, without order, panicking, bumping into each other. Dante's mind stayed sharp and still. He read the scene, through sound alone, the way he trained for years to do. 3 men in black gas masks burst from the Ram 1500. They fired 2 warning shots into the ceiling. The gunshots echoed off the marble floor like thunder in a stone canyon. Dante slid behind a thick granite column. He crouched low, breathing steady. He studied the enemy the way a chess player studies a board. These were professionals. They moved in a triangle formation. They spoke through small earpiece radios. Their leader had a scorpion tattoo on his neck, a mark of a hired fighter group called Iron Claws, once active overseas. A rival company, Sterling Crimson Group, had hired them. Their goal was simple and greedy: force Victoria to sign away $42 million in company shares. Dante had no gun, no armor. Broken glass littered the floor around him, ready to crunch under careless feet. He spotted a silver pen lying near his boot. He picked it up without a sound. In his hand, it became a weapon. The first kidnapper moved toward a backup power panel to check the wires. Dante moved behind him like a shadow. One hand covered the man's mouth. The other drove the pen into a nerve point below his ear. The man went limp in exactly 1.2 seconds. No sound, no struggle, no warning to his partners. Dante took the man's pistol, a Glock 19, with a silencer attached. He checked the magazine in the dark. 14 rounds remained. He moved through the wooden office partitions like smoke drifting through a hallway. The building's heating system clicked and hummed somewhere above the ceiling tiles, an ordinary sound now made strange by fear. Somewhere behind him, a fallen potted plant dripped soil onto the marble floor, one small clump at a time. A security monitor on the front desk still glowed blue, cycling through empty hallway footage, useless now. Near the front desk, the second kidnapper held Victoria down against the cold glass counter. Victoria's mascara ran down her cheeks in black streaks. Her whole body shook. She saw a tall shadow moving near the dark hallway, but she could not believe it was the driver she had just fired. Power. Money. None of it meant anything, with a gun pressed against her neck. The kidnapper's radio buzzed with silence. His partner wasn't answering. Panic flashed across his masked face. He yanked Victoria closer, using her as a shield, dragging her toward the shattered glass doors, where the truck idled outside. "Nobody move," he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "I'll put a bullet in her skull." From a dark corner, Dante stepped forward. No waiting, no fear in his eyes. He flicked the leather keychain hard to the left. It struck the floor with a soft clatter. The kidnapper's eyes darted toward the sound for 1/10 of a second. That was all Dante needed. He fired once. The bullet grazed the man's ear and slammed into his shoulder. His grip loosened instantly. Dante closed the distance in 2 long strides. He threw a sharp kick that snapped the man's wrist. The gun clattered away across the marble. Dante drove him down hard, onto the cold floor, pinning him with practiced ease. The lobby fell into a strange, heavy silence. Only the building alarm wailed far away, mixing with the steady drum of rain outside. Victoria sat on the floor, shaking, her legs unable to hold her up. Dante stood beside her, gun pointed safely toward the ground. He bent down and picked up the leather keychain. He blew gently on it, clearing away tiny bits of broken glass. He slid it back into his jacket pocket, careful as always. The woman who once controlled thousands of jobs and millions of dollars now looked small and fragile on the cold floor. Dante felt no anger, no pride. His face stayed calm, almost gentle. Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came out. She saw blood on his knuckles. She understood, slowly, that this man had just saved her life and asked for nothing in return. Outside, police sirens screamed closer. Red and blue lights flashed across the shattered windows at 8:22 p.m. Chicago patrol officers rushed into the lobby with weapons raised. They saw a large black man holding a gun near a famous CEO. Training took over instantly. They aimed straight at Dante. "Drop the weapon. Get on your knees. Now." Victoria tried to scream an explanation, but her voice broke apart in the chaos. The officers' hands stayed tense on their triggers, ready for the worst. Dante stayed calm. He lowered the gun slowly using 2 fingers only. He placed it gently on the front desk. He raised both hands high into the air. No anger. No resistance. He understood this world better than most people ever would. Then the third kidnapper's truck engine roared back to life. He aimed to plow straight into the crowd of officers to save his partners. Dante moved like lightning. He grabbed the pistol off the desk again. He fired 3 shots through the windshield in a heartbeat. The bullets tore into the front tire and the steering column. The truck spun out of control. It slammed into a metal pole outside with a deafening crash. Smoke curled from the crushed hood into the rainy night air. Heavy footsteps echoed through the shattered entrance. A full SWAT team marched in, fully armed, ready for battle. Black boots crunched over broken glass in perfect rhythm, one unit moving as a single machine. Their commander, Thomas Miller, led the way with sharp, quick steps. Rain still dripped from his helmet, catching the flashing red and blue lights from outside. Thomas scanned the wreckage. His eyes landed on Dante's face. He froze in place. Then, in front of every stunned officer, Thomas snapped to full attention. He raised a crisp, formal salute. "Stand down, everyone." Thomas barked into his radio. "This is Commander Dante Crawford, a legend of Chicago SWAT." Every officer in the lobby lowered their weapon at once. Silence spread across the room like cold water. Victoria's mouth fell open. The man she fired for poor judgment had trained the very best fighters in the entire state of Illinois. Her mind struggled to fit the 2 pictures together. Dante gave a small, tired smile. He walked over and patted Thomas on the shoulder, signaling him to relax. His return to honor happened quietly, without a single proud word. A detective named Sarah Owens interviewed Dante later, that same night, wrapped in a wool blanket someone had handed him near the ambulance bay. She had heard the SWAT commander's story secondhand and wanted to hear it directly. "Walk me through it," she said, notepad ready. "Start from when you left the building." Dante spoke slowly, calmly, leaving nothing out and adding nothing extra. He described the tattoo on the leader's neck, the radio chatter, the exact number of shots fired. Sarah stopped writing at one point and just looked at him. Most people can't remember details like this after something like that. "Training doesn't turn off," Dante said simply. "Even after 2 years." She nodded and kept writing. His statement, precise and calm, became the backbone of the entire court case against Sterling Crimson Group. Later, detectives pieced together the full plot. Sterling Crimson Group had planned everything from the start. They wanted Victoria's $42 million in shares. The protest, the alley, the truck, all of it was bait, aimed straight at a woman who trusted only money and control. Victoria learned that her own pride almost got her kidnapped, or worse. The man she dismissed as weak had walked through gunfire to protect her, without asking for a single dollar in return. By 8:45 p.m., the rain had softened into a light mist over downtown Chicago. Streetlights glowed through the fog like small golden moons. Victoria walked slowly toward the Lincoln Navigator, where Dante stood waiting to leave. Her hands trembled as she held out the gold-plated security badge. This time, her eyes held something new. Deep respect, real a humble heart. Nothing like the coldness from hours before. "Please," she said quietly, "come back. Chief of Security. Full authority over every safety decision, mine and my staff's. Name your price." Dante looked at the badge, then looked straight into her eyes. He didn't reach for it right away. "I'm not taking this job for your money, Victoria," he said, his voice steady and low. "I'm taking it because I promise to always come home safe. From now on, you'll be safe too, under my watch." He paused, letting the rain mist settle between them. "But respect isn't something you buy with a gold badge. It's something you earn every single day." Victoria nodded slowly. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not for her money, but for the person standing behind it. The next morning, News channels across Chicago covered the failed kidnapping attempt at Apex Horizon Tower. Reporters called it a miracle rescue. Nobody in the press knew the driver's real name yet. Inside police headquarters, Thomas Miller filed his report carefully. He wrote about a former commander who had walked away from the force after losing his best friend. He wrote about a man who chose silence over glory every single day for 2 long years. Word spread quietly through the department. Officers who once worked under Dante's training began showing up outside Apex Horizon just to shake his hand. Some saluted him in the lobby, right in front of stunned office workers heading to their desks. The front desk receptionist, a young woman named Priya, had watched the whole fight from behind a fallen plant. She told coworkers for weeks about the calm look on Dante's face while bullets flew past him. He didn't even blink, she said, again and again, to anyone who would listen. He looked like he already knew how it would end. The night janitor, an older man named Walter, had hidden behind the mailroom door during the attack. He later found Dante mopping up broken glass himself, refusing to let anyone else clean up the mess he felt responsible for. "You don't have to do that," Walter told him. "That's my job." Dante just shook his head and kept sweeping. "Everybody helped somebody tonight," he said. "Let me help you back." Small moments like that spread through the building faster than the news reports ever could. Employees who once looked past Dante in the hallway now nodded to him with real respect. He never asked for it. He never expected it either. An intern named Carlos started bringing him coffee every morning, unprompted, just as a small thank you. Dante always thanked him back, remembering his name, asking about his classes at the local community college. These small kindnesses built something that no top story ever could. A quiet culture of respect, spreading one small gesture at a time through every floor of the tower. Victoria watched all of this from her glass office upstairs. She realized how many good people she had overlooked in her life, simply because they didn't dress the part she expected. Her company leaders called an emergency meeting 3 days after the attack. Some wanted to fire her, worried the scandal would scare away investors. Others worried about lawsuits from the failed big business deal. Victoria walked into that meeting differently than she ever had before. She didn't way of sitting or threaten. She simply told the truth, plainly, about her own failures and what she planned to change. "I almost died because of my own pride," she told the board. "If you want someone who never admits mistakes, find another CEO. I plan on becoming a better one." The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then the oldest company leader, a man who had backed her since the company's founding, nodded slowly. "Let's see what you build next," he said. "That's all any of us can ask." The vote to keep her in place passed, without much argument after that. Victoria walked out of the meeting lighter than she had felt in years. She called a company meeting the very next week. She stood in front of every employee, from top bosses to janitors, and told them the full story. She admitted her mistake out loud, without excuses. "I judged a man by his uniform," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I almost lost my life because I couldn't see past a label. That will never happen again under this roof." She announced a new company policy that same day. Every employee, regardless of position, would receive equal respect and equal voice in safety decisions. She created a safe way to speak up for anyone who felt mistreated by leadership. The room stayed silent for a long moment after she finished speaking. Then, slowly, someone in the back began to clap. Others joined in, one by one, until the whole floor filled with applause. Victoria hadn't expected that. She blinked back tears she refused to let fall in front of her staff. For years, she believed strength meant never showing weakness. That belief had almost cost her everything. An older accountant named Robert raised his hand near the end of the meeting. He had worked at Apex Horizon for 11 years, always quiet, always overlooked in budget meetings. "Ma'am," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "does this mean we can actually speak up now, without losing our jobs?" Victoria looked at him directly, something she rarely did with junior staff before that night. "Yes," she said. "Starting today, that's exactly what it means." Robert nodded, sat back down, and said nothing more. But something in his way of sitting had changed. He sat a little straighter for the rest of the meeting. He even raised his hand once more, later, to ask a question about the new budget plan. Meanwhile, Dante settled into his new role as head of security. He redesigned the building's safety protocols from the ground up. He trained the front desk staff to spot warning signs, the same signs he noticed that rainy night. He also kept his promise to Maya. Every evening, he still made it home for dinner, usually before 7. The soup still simmered on the stove. The keychain still sat in his jacket pocket, a little more worn each week. One evening, Maya asked him about the attack. She had heard rumors from classmates whose parents worked downtown. "Were you scared?" she asked, stirring her soup slowly. Dante thought for a moment before answering. For a second, yes. But I wasn't scared of getting hurt. I was scared of breaking my promise to you. Maya smiled and reached across the table. She squeezed his hand gently. You didn't break it. You just proved what kind of man keeps a promise. Victoria, for her part, made good on every word she said that rainy night. She funded a full grant for Maya's medical studies at the University of Chicago. The tuition, worth $14,235.50 each semester, was covered in full. Maya cried when she got the letter in the mail. She read it twice, then a third time, making sure the words were real. She called Dante immediately, her voice shaking with disbelief. They covered everything, she said. Every semester. All 4 years. Dante sat down slowly on the couch, gripping the phone tighter than he meant to. You earned that, he said. Every bit of it. We earned it, Maya corrected him gently. You worked 2 jobs, so I could even apply in the first place. Neither of them said much after that. Some moments didn't need many words at all. She also signed a security contract for Dante worth $385,450 a year. But money was never the true prize in this story. The true prize was a woman learning a humble heart the hard way. It was a man finally allowed to be seen for who he really was. Months passed. Apex Horizon Tower became known for something new across Chicago, not just profits, but decency. Employees spoke of a CEO who listened now, who walked the floors, and learned every name. Dante still drove Victoria occasionally, though now as a partner rather than a servant. On quiet nights, she would ask him questions about his old life, about Marcus, about the choices that shaped him. He answered honestly, without bitterness. He had made peace with his past, one calm breath at a time. The scorpion-tattooed leader and his crew faced serious charges for kidnapping and a crime. Sterling Crimson Group's top bosses were checked for their role in hiring the hired fighters. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. The police traced the money first. A hidden bank account had paid the Iron Claws crew $40,000 up front, with more promised after the shares changed hands. That account led straight back to Sterling Crimson's money manager. The money manager tried to blame a rogue employee, but emails told a different story. Top bosses had discussed the plan in writing, calling it a pressure plan instead of a crime. That phrase became the top story in every newspaper that covered the trial. Sterling Crimson's stock dropped sharply within days of the arrests. Clients pulled contracts one after another, unwilling to be linked to a kidnapping scheme. The company that once threatened Apex Horizon fell apart under its own greed. Victoria never celebrated their downfall. She simply moved forward, focused on building something safer and more honest in her own company's place. Thomas Miller visited the tower often after that night, sometimes just to grab coffee with his old commander. Their friendship, buried under years of separation, found new life in ordinary conversations about ordinary days. Thomas had been a rookie under Dante's command years earlier, nervous and unsure of himself. Dante spent extra hours training him after shifts, refusing to let him quit even when he wanted to. You saved my career back then, Thomas told him one afternoon, stirring sugar into his coffee. I never got the chance to thank you properly. You don't owe me anything, Dante said. You earned every promotion yourself. Thomas shook his head, smiling. Still, it's good to have you back, even if it's just for coffee sometimes. They talked about Marcus sometimes too, carefully, the way old friends talk about a shared wound that never fully closes. Thomas had been at the funeral. He remembered how still Dante stood the entire service, like a man carved from stone. He'd be proud of you. Thomas said quietly one evening. Both jobs, both promises. You kept them all. Dante didn't answer right away. He just nodded, looking out at the Chicago skyline, through the coffee shop window. Snow had started falling outside, soft and slow, dusting the sidewalks white. Some promises take longer to keep than others, Dante finally said. But you keep them anyway. That's the whole point. Thomas raised his coffee cup slightly, a small quiet toast between old friends. Dante tapped his own cup against it, and they sat there while longer, saying nothing else. Dante never bragged about that rainy night. He never needed to. His calm presence spoke louder than any story ever could. Late one evening, as Dante locked up the security office, he looked out the window at the Chicago skyline glowing through the mist. He touched the leather keychain in his pocket, feeling the worn grooves of the number 402. He thought about Marcus. He thought about the promise made in grief. He thought about the quiet strength it took to keep that promise alive, without losing himself. A protector, he realized, never stops being a protector. He simply chooses when and how to show it. He thought about all the years he spent hiding that part of himself, worried it would scare people away. He realized now that the world didn't need him to hide it. The world needed people willing to stand up, quietly, when it mattered most. He locked the office door behind him and walked toward the elevator. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Maya, asking if he wanted extra bread with dinner. He smiled and typed back a quick yes. Some things never changed, no matter how much danger passed, through a single rainy night. Dinner still waited. Family still mattered most. He rode the elevator down in silence, watching the floor numbers count downward. When the doors opened, cold night air rushed in from the lobby entrance. It carried the smell of wet pavement and distant coffee from a shop across the street. He stepped out into the Chicago night, his shoes echoing softly against the granite floor. Above him, the tower's lights glowed steady against the dark sky, a small symbol of everything that had changed since that storm. Victoria's Tower stood a little taller after that winter. It wasn't the glass or the steel. It was the people inside, finally learning to see each other clearly. And somewhere in that quiet lobby, a gold badge sat safely in a drawer. It was a reminder. True worth was never about the title on a name tag. It was about the courage to stand firm when everything else falls apart. The rain over Chicago eventually stopped for good that season. But the lesson it left behind stayed with everyone who witnessed it, long after the clouds cleared away. Years later, people at Apex Horizon still told the story of that rainy night to new hires during the first day of work. They talked about a quiet driver who turned out to be something far greater than anyone expected. They talked about a CEO who learned, the hard way, that respect could never be demanded, only earned. They talked about a leather keychain worn soft at the edges that still sat in a jacket pocket somewhere in that very building. Some lessons come wrapped in gunfire and broken glass. Others come quietly, in the space between two people finally choosing to see each other clearly. Both kinds change a person forever, in their own way. Dante Crawford never asked to be a hero twice in one lifetime. He simply refused to look away when someone needed him. That, in the end, was the only title that ever mattered to him at all.